Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This all went down a few years back when I was still at Mammoth Tech, a massive tech giant where I'd worked for ages. Over the decades, I'd climbed up from the entry-level trenches to become a specialized fixer, the go-to person for security emergencies, and unfixable messes that made headlines. I can't dish on the juicy details, sadly, but let's just say high-level VPs in various divisions knew me well for my ability to wrangle intense nerds and resolve gnarly, complex issues across multiple teams. It was a thrill. At the time of this story, I was part of a small security squad in the product engineering wing. Our team of 8 had weathered countless reorgs and manager shuffles, but we kept our heads down and vibed well together. One transitional period is particularly relevant. Our capable manager, Darius, abruptly assigned me a colossal, urgent project with massive legal implications. The senior VP wanted it done within 4 to 6 weeks, and it involved coordinating 6 different divisions, some with, challenging personalities. Oh, and Darius was going on vacation for 3 weeks, leaving me to figure out this unprecedented, high-stakes endeavor that would make international waves. No pressure. Despite the chaos, I nailed it. I assembled the cross-divisional team, mapped out the entire plan on a whiteboard, that took days, and got everyone aligned before the deadline. After presenting the strategy to the XX and legal team, assuring them I had it handled, we executed flawlessly and ahead of schedule. Boom. Months later, our solid manager split, and in came Anton, a clueless outsider with zero security or emergency response experience. He was the quintessential inept middle manager, self-important, dismissive, cared more about appearances than substance, and micromanaged things he didn't grasp, making everything exponentially worse. One of Anton's absurd quirks? He didn't want us correcting each other in front of others, even when plans changed constantly, as they do in product dev. We'd leave meetings with inaccurate info that derailed schedules and resources. Madness. Soon after his arrival, Anton grew openly hostile toward me, and only me. While he didn't comprehend my role, he was certain I wasn't doing it correctly, and berated me in front of others. My bemused colleagues asked what was going on. I had no clue either. Here's the thing. I was the sole woman on the team and had a disability. While I'd endured my share of old boys club antics in tech over the years, I didn't cry discrimination lightly. But Anton's hostility reeked of sexism and ableism. For instance, I was one of the few with a private office due to my seniority and disability, while the rest of the team suffered in an open bullpen, a setup everyone loathed. Anton threw a tantrum that I, a lowly subordinate, and a woman no less, got an office while he didn't. He seemed less bothered when men with tenure got offices, just me. His fragile ego couldn't stand a door-having woman outranking him. Then there were his snide remarks, like reprimanding me for my bad attitude in a meeting where I'd stayed silent per his orders. When I asked how I'd had an attitude without speaking, he sneered, "I didn't like the look on your face." Okay, dude. Once I realized I could never appease this guy, I documented his bias with HR, knowing full well they'd be useless. Shockingly, they just told me to try harder to get along with him. So I emailed a paper trail about his misogyny reflecting negatively on future reviews. Not that it helped, but I tried. Sure enough, months later came the scathing performance review, clearly an attempt to fire me amid company-wide layoffs when few internal positions were available. I raised hell with HR again about the discrimination I'd warned them about, to no avail. But hey, that documentation would become handy later. With nowhere else to go at Mammoth Tech and now a tarnished record, I lined up a far better job at another local tech titan. Once I had that exit secured, I hired an attorney to negotiate a check and quiet departure from my long-term employer. I'd never imagined leaving this way. Thanks to the documented misogyny, witnesses, and HR's inaction, Mammoth Tech had no leg to stand on. They agreed to pay me off to avoid a lawsuit as long as I kept my separation agreement confidential. I figured some HR, nobody would sign it, But when I got the final copy, it was our senior VP, the one I'd directly assured about nailing that make-or-break project he'd assigned me. Ooh, I cackled at the thought of Anton having to explain that costly severance to an exec who knew me well. Not long after, an old Mammoth Tech security pal named Julia asked if I knew Anton, as he was interviewing at her company the next day for a manager role. I feigned neutrality, but said I could discuss him off record that evening if she wanted the full scoop. You bet, she called. I hypothetically regaled Julia with tales of Anton's hostilities, insecurities, and biases. I offered insights into his triggers and suggested strategic questions that would set him off. She eagerly took notes. The interview imploded spectacularly. When Julia shared the glorious aftermath, I could barely contain my glee. Recounting how he'd yelled at her twice during his interview, she revealed the final verdict. Not just no hire, but an emphatic no hire ever. A total blacklisting from future roles at her tech titan. Within 6 months of being the insufferable jerk who pushed me out of Mammoth Tech, Anton found himself forced to relocate his family after getting blackballed from 2 industry giants in our region's insular tech sphere, all because the woman he thought so inconsequential had thousands of connections he never considered. To this day, that oblivious misogynist likely has no idea why his interview bombed so badly, or how I subtly sabotaged his local prospects after his horrific treatment of me. Serves him right for underestimating this fierce lady. The next one is an entitled people story. I've always been a car guy. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been fascinated by classic cars and dreamt of owning some of the rarest and most coveted models out there. As an adult, I worked hard to turn that dream into a reality. My prized possession was a 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona, one of only 503 ever made. I spared no expense in restoring her to her former glory. The plum-crazy purple paint gleamed flawlessly, and the 440 big block rumbled with raw power. Just looking at her made my heart swell with joy. When I bought my house, I made sure to get a place with a big garage where I could keep my baby safe. The neighborhood itself was decent, a typical suburb with manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses. The only annoying thing was the homeowners association. I tried to avoid them as much as possible since they seemed like the nosy, naggy type. As long as I paid my dues on time, I figured they'd leave me alone. Oh, how wrong I was. It started with notices taped to my door about my grass being half an inch too tall, or my trash cans being visible from the street on non-collection days. Then came the phone calls complaining about the noise and exhaust fumes from my Dodge. I explained that I only drove her on weekends and kept her tucked away in my garage, but they didn't care. The head of the homeowner association, Janet, was the worst. She acted like the queen bee, bossing around the neighborhood according to her whims. One Saturday morning, I headed out to the garage, eager to take my baby for a spin, but when I pressed the button, the door slowly rattled open to reveal nothing. My stomach dropped as I scanned the empty garage in disbelief. My Dodge, my pride and joy was gone, vanished without a trace. I ran back inside and checked the security footage from the cameras I had installed. To my horror and rage, I witnessed Janet and her homeowner association goons breaking into my garage and towing away my Dodge just hours before. My hands trembled and heart pounded as I grabbed my phone to call Janet. She answered with a smug, "Hello?" I demanded to know why she broke into private property to steal my car. Janet calmly replied that my Dodge was in violation of homeowner association rules about offensive vehicles, so it had to be removed. I pointed out that she had no legal authority to trespass or confiscate personal property. Janet laughed and said the homeowner association could do as they pleased. Furious, I warned her that I was calling the police to report the theft, but Janet didn't seem worried in the least. She told me to check the local junkyard if I wanted my car back. Then she hung up on me. I sped over to the junkyard, panicked that my baby was about to be crushed into a cube. Thankfully, when I arrived, my Dodge sat in the holding area, untouched. After a screaming match with the owner, I finally got them to release her to me. As I drove her home, tears of anger and relief fell onto the steering wheel. I had almost lost her due to that deranged homeowner association Karen. Well, Janet had messed with the wrong guy. I wasted no time contacting my lawyer to sue her and the entire homeowner association board for illegally trespassing on my property and having my car towed without cause. I provided the video evidence and statements from others in the neighborhood who were also fed up with the homeowner association's harassment. It was a solid case, and the judge agreed. Janet was ordered to pay a huge sum in punitive damages, and the homeowner association board members were prohibited from serving again. As an extra get lost from the judge, they even revoked the homeowner association charter, dissolving it for good. When the verdict came down, I looked over and saw Janet's smugness had melted away. She knew she was ruined, both financially and socially, by her own sense of entitlement. The once mighty homeowner association Queen Bee had been dethroned and defeated. These days, the neighborhood is peaceful without the homeowner association's tyranny. I still have my baby right where she belongs, snug in my garage. I even bought another classic muscle car to keep her company. As for Janet, rumor has it she had to sell her house and move away in shame. Every time I see my two beauties gleaming in the sun, I can't help but smile, knowing that justice was served in the end. The next one is a petty revenge story. You really never realize something is going to go on as long as it does until you look back. 2 years ago, I was given a new-to-me phone number when I purchased a cell phone. Immediately, I was bombarded by friends, family, and collection agents of the previous owner of the number, not the phone. They were all looking for the same woman, by name. In the first couple of months, I answered that the person must have changed their number, that I just got this number with a new phone, no harm, no foul. But it hasn't stopped, and I found out why. She is still giving out this number. One day she logged into her coffee app, and it sent this phone the sign-up code. I bounced to it and logged in with the code. The account had her email address. Finally, I can let her know what's going on and hopefully stop this crap. I used that info to contact her. I told her I'm sure she didn't mean any harm, but it's become ridiculous. Please stop giving out this number. She replied that I'm some kind of stalker freak. I replied that if she continues to give out my number, I will cancel every appointment that comes across and tell family she died and tell creditors where to find her. She blocked my email. I figured all is well if she stops. She didn't. Okay, bet. A month ago, her application for a school was canceled. Today, her dental appointment for Thursday was canceled. Stop sending your crap to my number. I plan to finally change this number when I get a personal issue resolved. But honestly, I'm low-key enjoying this. And she's still giving out the number, so... The next one is a malicious compliance story. Many moons ago, I spent my youth in the army. I worked in comms and spent some excellent years doing dumb stuff with some of the best guys and girls you could ever meet. One of those years of my misspent youth, I was deployed to a hot and sandy location. This length of deployment was unusual for me as most deployments in the British Army are 6 months. The extra time was due to us being one of the first units deployed, and after supporting the initial deployment, they requested volunteers to remain and support and train some of the relieving units and newly deployed logistics headquarters, HQ. At this stage in my career, I had been lucky enough to jump from deployment to deployment, and I was loving the extra money that gave me. So I happily volunteered to stay. I was tasked with supporting one of the logistics HQs. I'd run that detachment earlier in the deployment and was happy to return, as it was far away from the main HQ and all the bored adults and seniors that the HQ brings. Think sweeping the desert, that kind of thing. Our little detachment was an oasis in a sea of nonsense. It was just 6 guys and girls with me as the detachment commander. I was a corporal, CPL full screw at the time. The isolated nature of our det meant that anyone sent there had to be able to operate independently, be very adaptable, and open to improvising to support where required. Our main unit also liked to send us their troublemakers, but due to the nature of the det, they could only send us people who could do their role also. So, I ended up with all the best and most interesting scum of my unit, and it was amazing. For any Yanks reading, it would have been an E4 Mafia paradise. Within weeks, we had a patio and rock garden set up. We had a BBQ pit, shower area, gym. We'd sorted a deal with the local civilian contractors for us to receive beer in exchange for our help in vehicle and generator servicing. The best part was due to us being a comms det, it was restricted entry to our area, so we were free from any surprise visits. Now that I've set out the backstory, I'll get onto the malicious compliance. The HQ we were supporting was regularly rotating its senior non-commissioned officers, SNCO, and officers from the deployment. They'd do the minimum time to qualify for a medal, and they get replaced with someone new. It was a lousy practice that eventually got shut down, but not until much later, deployments. We were fairly used to this by now, and the only overhead we had was creating new accounts for the seniors. The guys who actually did the work, my peer group in the HQ, stayed the same mostly. This latest rotation saw the old regimental quartermaster sergeant, RQMS, being replaced by a newly promoted RQMS. This new guy was a jerk, full of his own self-importance. He hated that we had a little island of nonsense-free tranquility within his eyesight. I'd see him pacing outside our fence line when he first arrived, unable to comprehend that he wasn't allowed to just walk in. By this point, I had been in this location for about 6 months, and I was thoroughly past the point of giving any care. The RQMMS hated that he had to deal with me, a lowly full screw as OC of the det, and myself and the crew of reprobates were out of his chain of command. One day, he absolutely lost his mind because we were BBQing half a goat and had invited a few of his guys to join us after work for some beers and delicious goat wraps. By this stage, we'd used Hessian to fence off our BBQ and bar area so that we could obscure it from prying eyes. He went off to get some of his unit's regimental police, RPs. These are not real military police, just jobs worse with no real job in a unit, to come and shut us down. I told them to jog on. They weren't getting in my det, and I don't care who sent them. Apparently, the next day, he was apoplectic. The guys who worked with him warned us he was determined to bring my det to heel. His solution was removing our welfare package that we were issued through his department as a favor from his guys for some services that we were providing. It consisted of a small fridge, TV, and British Forces Broadcasting Service TV decoder, BFBS box. The conversation went roughly as follows. RQMS, Corporal Tosspot. It appears that there has been a paperwork error, and you have been given one of my welfare packages by mistake. Me. Okay, sir. I'd be happy to fill that in. Shall I drop by your office? RQMS. You can drop by my office and bring the package, but you won't be filling in any paperwork, Corporal. You may have wrangled the last RQ, but as far as I'm concerned, you lot can do one if you think you're getting that welfare package back off me. And if there's anything else that I find that isn't 100% correct, paperwork-wise, then I'll be shutting that right down. You may not be mine, and I may not be able to enter your little compound, but I'm going to have you, son. Every resupply demand, every transport request, better be completed correctly. I'm going to make your lives hell with paperwork and admin. Cue malicious compliance. Me. I'm sorry to hear that, sir. I'm sorry you feel the service that we provide isn't good enough. The old RQMS was very happy with the services that he was getting from us, and he sent over the spare welfare package as a thank you. Are you sure that it's paperwork that's the issue here? Are you not happy with phones and the internet? RQMS. Corporal, I have no complaints regarding the comms. You just need to complete the correct paperwork and have it authorized by me. At this point, it is clear that he is never going to authorize the return of the welfare package and is very smug about it.
Me, okay, sir. You're of course correct. Paperwork is essential.
RQMS, are you giving me attitude, Corporal? Me. Not at all, sir. Just agreeing with you. To be clear, you are happy with everything else we provide to the HQ. You just want me to complete the correct paperwork? RQMS. That's correct, Corporal. Me. No problem, sir. Happy to oblige. I delivered the welfare package back to his stores. His guys were very apologetic. I told them not to worry. You see, the welfare package was a thank you for all the extra phone lines and terminals that we'd provided for the previous RQMSs. These expanded his and his unit's working capacity. Most importantly, I had run phone lines to the sleeping areas so that him and his lads could call home without using their limited welfare phone cards. I'd also laid some precious unfiltered internet lines, too. Internet to deployed units is very rare, and unfiltered internet is almost unheard of for British units. What I was providing was immense value to lonely squatties, and it was also without paperwork. When I got back to my debt, I flicked a couple of switches, turning off all the paperwork-less connections. I waited for the inevitable. It didn't take long. The first visitor was one of the privates letting us know that he'd been cut off mid-call back home. I apologized and explained what was going on with the RQMS. He understood, not happy about it, but understood. He went off muttering about throbbers who can't leave well enough alone. The next was one of the RQMS's full screws, who I have a lot of time for. She came round and asked what was going on with the comms. She was in the office when I had the conversation with the RQMS earlier. We had a bit of chat about what a belter he is, and then she asked what was going on. I explained that as per the RQMS's request, we are following his example and doing things by the book, and I've turned off all services without the correct paperwork. She looked at me knowingly. So, what does that mean? She asked. I explained that the only services that I had been ordered to provide were for the HQ. The rest would have to request them through me and be approved by Division HQ as per orders. I handed her a copy of the request forms to be completed in triplicate, as I didn't have a photocopier and they couldn't send me it by email, as I'd just turned their kid off. She had a bit of a chuckle, and went off back to her boss, paperwork in hand. You see, the only orders I had were for the 6 lines and terminal in the HQ. The 30-odd lines I'd laid extra were essentially me being a good bloke and supporting the mission and departments as they grew around the HQ. It was initiative and adaptability on my part. These were all now off, and I had a steady stream of visitors throughout the day wanting to know what was going on. I directed them all to the RQMS, who had the request forms. My last visitor was the operations captain. He was a top bloke. A late entry, LE, officer, had gone through the ranks from private to regimental sergeant major, RSM, and was now commissioned as an officer, who had spent more than a few nights in our compound with a beer and talking crap with us. He was one of the very first recipients of a private line and internet. He asked me what was going on. He'd been round the houses, so he knew there were shenanigans afoot. I told him the situation. His face dropped. "Leave it with me," is all that he said, and off he went. 30 means later the RQMS was back at the entrance to my compound with the welfare package. The ops captain was with him, looming over him as only a RSM, or former RSM in this case, can. Me. "Hello, sir. How can I help?" RQMS. Very sheepishly. "Hello, Corporal. There seems to have been an error and we've found your paperwork for the welfare package. So I'm returning it with my apologies." Me. "No need to apologize, sir. Easy mistake to make." RQMS. "So are we good?" Me. "And the other paperwork moving forward?" RQMS. "There's no need for all that." Looking over his shoulder at the ops captain. "We are, after all, on the same team." Me. "We are indeed, sir." I look over my shoulder and give one of my guys a nod. "I think you'll find everything is now back to as it was." RQMS. "Excellent. Thank you very much, Corporal." And off he went. The ops captain stared daggers at him as he left. He just gave me a nod and confirmed that drinks were still on for the next day and toddled off back to his pit. I was never bothered by the RQMS again. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.